Our speaker joins us today to share his vision on what we need to do to make our region great. Please join me in welcoming our speaker for this afternoon, Robert P. Kelly, Chairman and CEO of BNY Mellon.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much, Doris. It's a real pleasure to be here in Pittsburgh again. And thank you for everything you're doing for Pittsburgh and the greater business community through this great organization. And I'm extremely impressed about your organizational abilities here. Doris asked me to speak for 3 hours, and I said, sure, no problem. And I also was encouraged to use a lot of jargon, so I'll see what I can do for you. A couple of words about supplier diversity. It's extremely important to our company. I think we're doing well in it, but frankly, we're going to do better in it in future years. And why do we do that? It's just because it's good business, as you know. It means for more and better choices for ourselves as well as for our clients. And a couple things about our company here, which is kind of fun. Someone mentioned to me this morning that we announced our merger with Legacy Bank in New York 3 years ago on Friday. And at that point, we had 6,000 employees in Pittsburgh, and we now have 6,800 employees, so we have 800 more. And thank you. And I can tell you something else, and that is we're going to be adding hundreds more employees over coming few years. And I'll tell you why we're doing that, because that too is good business. This is a great city to have a business from, and in. You've got all the right things going for you. You've got the education system, you've got the healthcare system. Okay, you have too many civic governments. I do buy that part. You can work on that. You can work on that. But seriously, we have the infrastructure, you have the technology people. You got one of the best technology schools in the nation here with Pitt and another dozen universities. What we need is qualified, bright young people that are really well educated. And that is the key for why we are growing and will continue to grow our workforce here in Pittsburgh. And it's great. By the way, we also gave over $3 million in charitable grants to Pittsburgh last year. And we're not giving up on that. We're not cutting it back. And you know, it's kind of interesting. I was at an event last night for Children's Aid Society, and the organizers mentioned to me that you know, that we didn't reduce our commitment to Children's Aid, and a lot of companies unfortunately have to, and many other charitable giving activities in the nation right now. And this is the time that we shouldn't be doing that. Of course, it's hard, and we're trying to give back wherever we can. And you know, we have operations in 34 countries, and no matter where I go, I always talk to the staff, and we do town halls, and I do mention to everyone at those town halls, you know, give back to your community, because we've been very fortunate to have jobs and be in a good company and delivering for our clients. I'm just going to talk for about, it won't really be 3 hours, and I'll just mention a few things about the economy. Of course, it's been really, really tough the last year for everyone, and it's so different than prior recessions that we've seen, not just because of the depth of the recession, but because of the nature of the recession. In the last couple of recessions that I've been around, it's always been about business having a recession. It's never really been about the consumer, and this is definitely a consumer recession, and that's a much bigger issue. Because the consumer is about 70% of GDP in this nation, business is about 30%. So it's been astonishingly bad, and the worst part of it has been in the housing market, of course, and the most important asset for most Americans, and the largest asset has been their home. And in most cities, and Pittsburgh has certainly been blessed in many degrees compared to other cities and states in this nation. They've been blessed with the fact that housing hasn't been as much of an issue as in other states, particularly in the South and Southwest. But you know, if your house is going down in value every month or every quarter, you know, it's pretty tough to feel good about your outlook, and particularly when your 401k is down and the like, and it's been tough. The good news is that it feels like things are finally starting to turn. We have some what they call GDP growth, acronyms, but the economy is actually starting to grow a little bit. The stimulus is taking effect. People are starting to rebuild inventories a little bit, which is really nice to see. And we saw that in the third quarter. We'll probably see it in the fourth quarter. In all likelihood, we're going to have reasonably good, not high, but good economic growth next year in every quarter. Typically, when you come out of deep recessions, you have really big rebounds in GDP growth at 5, 6, 7%. We're not going to have that this time. It's going to be a little lower. It's going to probably be 2 or 3%, and maybe we'll get lucky and have it a little bit higher. But the big difference between then and now is that you know, the average American, of course, added a lot of debt over the last decade, and they're doing exactly the right thing. They're paying down debt and they're saving. The savings rate in the United States from the 50s through the 80s was 8 or 9% a year, and then slowly from the mid-80s right through to this decade, the savings rate went to 0 and then kind of went negative. And that's bad. So people, in essence, were spending the equity in their homes right at the peak of the market, unfortunately. But the right things are being done now. So you think about the consumer spending more. That's over. People were really careful last weekend on the Black Friday and shopping. And you know what? You could say if you're in the retailing business, that's a bad thing. But on the other hand, it's long overdue. And so it's a good thing that the average American is starting to save more money and paying down debt. The kind of mild negative to that, of course, is as the savings rate goes up, that means you're not going to have as much retail spending, which kind of mutes that GDP growth a little bit. So, but we are going to have some growth. And the two things that I'm watching the most is, firstly, the unemployment rate. I think we're getting close to the peak. The worst I ever saw in my working career was in 1982, and the unemployment rate went to 10.8% in America, and we're at 10.2 right now. It's going to go a little higher, but hopefully that'll be over with sometime next year, and hopefully sooner rather than later. I'm hoping it'll be over by the spring or the summer. So that's my main interest, and I think that's what everyone cares about, is getting people back to work here. The second thing is that housing issue. And housing overall has fallen about 30%. Nationally, and a lot worse, of course, in the Southeast and the Southwest. And you've been relatively blessed here, as I said. But it doesn't feel like it's bottomed yet. And it'll bottom next year. And finally, maybe housing prices will start to edge up a little bit nationally. The thing that I'm kind of focused on, what I worry about right now is there's a lot of regulatory reform going on in our industry right now. And parts of it it's pretty aggressive stuff, asking for more capital and more liquidity, and the government, of course, is really interested in more lending, and we're not a traditional bank, but my concern is that it's actually slowing down more lending, and it actually may slow down the recovery. So we're watching the regulatory reform process pretty carefully, and we've just had the worst recession in 80 years, and you know, let's make sure we get it right here. We don't have to jump on all this stuff overnight, and some reforms are required, so let's make sure we get it right and take the time to do it right. I worry a bit about interest rates too, and they are certainly low now, and I think they're probably going to stay low, which will be really good for mortgage rates and getting loans and all that kind of good stuff, and that'll be great for small business. But it kind of comes back to mainly my primary worry, and that is government deficit. Overall, though, I feel pretty good, and I feel better today than I did 3 months ago, better than 6 months ago, and infinitely better than a year ago. So that's the good news, and there's, you know, the odds of a double-dip recession here are looking pretty low. And, you know, I'm no economist, I'm accounting and banking background, but it feels like the odds of it are pretty unlikely at this point. So let's look forward to a better year next year, and let's all work hard to support the business community and the civic life of Pittsburgh. And thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here.